So last year, I wanted no part of my local neighborhood watch. I already lived in an HOA, which stands for Homeowners Association, and that was already micromanagement enough for me. The HOA can be really ridiculous sometimes, and one time they made me hire a construction company to move my shed over 2 inches because it violated my contract. The shed was in my backyard, which was behind a fence, which was where I moved in. They said that I could tear it down or move it within the code of the neighborhood. I could write multiple horror stories about those people, but that's a tale for another day. Needless to say, I didn't get along with my HOA, so I wanted nothing to do with my neighborhood watch committee. I think I even made some comments like I'd rather get robbed than deal with those people. Well, of course, someone heard me, and I got in trouble for that one as well. So why am I telling you a story about the neighborhood watch that we have here, if I wanted nothing to do with it? Well, because as fate would have it, because of the watch, my family and I are safe. Despite the rising number of muggings in our neighborhood, I refused to join the local neighborhood watch or even give them the light of day. I was always wary of people trying to control my life, and the idea of having to patrol the streets at night just didn't appeal to me. I'm a big guy, I hit the gym quite a decent amount, and I was confident, if not a little ignorant, that I could handle myself in a confrontation if some robber or mugger was stupid enough to confront me. And besides that, I figured all the chatter and news of muggings in my area was just exaggeration of an isolated event. But my stubbornness came at a cost. So one night, as I was walking home from a late shift at work, I worked relatively close to my house, and I loved the peace of the calm night walking home. On that night, I was suddenly surrounded by a group of men. I can't remember exactly how they ended up around me, as it happened very quickly, or how many men exactly, but I do know that it was at least 5, and they immediately demanded my wallet and phone, and I knew better than to argue with them. As I rifled through my pockets, I couldn't help but curse myself for not taking the necessary precautions. I'd always thought that I could handle myself, but the reality was that I'm just another victim. My arrogance convinced me that I could take anyone in a fight, but not once did I think about multiple attackers or the fact that they would actually be carrying a weapon. After they stole my belongings, I received the beating of my lifetime. A beating that I still carry physical and mental scars from. After all this went down, and I was still alive, I couldn't shake off the fear and paranoia that had taken hold of me. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, and I started carrying a pocket knife with me every time I went to work and really everywhere I went. One day while I was walking home from the grocery store, I saw a man who looked like he was following me. I picked up my pace and he did too. My heart was racing, and I could feel the cold sweat on my forehead. I knew that I couldn't outrun him, so I turned around and just confronted him. He was a tall, burly man with this menacing look on his face. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He just sneered at me and reached for something in his pocket. And that was all the confirmation I needed. I pulled out my knife and held it in front of me. The man paused for a moment, then turned and ran away. I stood there, still shaking from the adrenaline, and realized that I had narrowly avoided another mugging. I couldn't tell if this event was related to the last one since the man was alone and not surrounded by multiple attackers. I ran home and basically had a panic attack for the next couple of hours, remembering all I went through before. That night was miserable, and I couldn't stop shaking. My wife consoled me the best that she could, but I was a mental wreck. I let my dogs out before bed, and within 2 minutes of them being outside, I could hear them barking ferociously. I ran outside, and in my backyard was the same man from earlier, and now he was with 2 other figures. I was able to wrangle the dogs and get them inside with my wife. As I stood in the doorway, the 3 people ran at me in a full sprint towards my back door. Even though I slammed the door in his face, they were able to break through the door with very minimal effort. When breaking through the door, he knocked me to the ground. My wife screamed, taking the dogs, and ran into the spare room and locked the door. The bigger guy kicked me hard in the ribs while I was still down and trying to get to my feet. After the first big kick, a barrage of kicks started to come in sequence while I lay on the ground. I just closed my eyes and hoped that it would end soon and that my wife would be safe. I figured if I took the beating, maybe my wife would be spared. Through incoherent yelling and laughing, I heard a grunt and the sound of pain. Before I knew it, the kicks had stopped coming in and the only noise I heard was the commotion of a struggle. I opened my eyes and slowly got to my feet, and in the backyard was the leader of my HOA, who happened to be the head of my neighborhood watch. He was out there with 6 other members of the neighborhood. They had baseball bats, and they were taking action into their own hands. After being hit with the bat, the men jumped the fence and fled into the night somewhere. I was able to get to my feet, and I thanked them, who claimed that they were just doing what any good person would do. He claimed that he had heard me screaming for my dogs and that my yelling sounded like trouble was imminent and very real, so he grabbed all the other neighbors nearby and they ran over as fast as they could, and they were literally there within minutes. I couldn't have been more thankful for the help, and it was because of this stupid watch that I'm safe and my wife and dogs are unharmed. We called the police and reported everything, but unfortunately I'm not sure they ever caught those specific criminals. That incident was a wake-up call that I needed. I realized that I couldn't rely on luck or my own instincts to keep me safe. I needed to act and do something to actually protect myself. I started to take self-defense classes with my wife, and I also beefed up security around my house, installing cameras and alarms. I'm not playing any more games. I can say that there have been no reports or incidents that I know of after this attack, and I hope to move someday soon, but unfortunately it's not a simple luxury that I can afford just yet in my life. I may not like my HOA or the neighborhood watch, but I'm thankful that they were there for me then. Even with my horrible attitude, these truly are local heroes that have come to my aid, and for that, I'm forever grateful. If you enjoyed this scary story, listen to thousands more, either over on the Let's Read YouTube channel or podcast.